Hi folks, how you doing? After losing yesterday against Arcadian Knightish with white pieces, the world champion today was back to black, and now he was facing in the 8th round of the chess Olympiad Borki Predojevic from Bosnia and Herzegovina. So today the Norwegian genius was with black pieces, eager to demonstrate that yesterday's defeat was just an accident, just isn't the usual thing to happen. Let's see how he did today. After the opening we reached a symmetrical English, knight c6, a g3, g6. As I said, symmetrical English, very solid and healthy structure for black. Bishop to g7, knight to c3 here. White has some options. The structure he wants to choose. Carlsen went for this d6 line. It's a possibility among others. Why not? White castles, and he plays e6, this little flexible central pawns. After d3 he goes knight g7, solid and really flexible system. He can play either defensive or offensive schemes with f5 if necessary. He can still pretty much advance in the way he wants these central pawns, not defining much his positions, just getting developed. White plays bishop to d2. And here in this position, it is very popular to play short castle. It seems very natural. But Carlsen here chose the move b6, kind of anticipating the rook b1, a3, b4 typical idea for white, defending his c5 pawn. And just to remark, this move has been played very few times, and in my database I got a recent game in 2013. This was played with black pieces by none other but the Cuban #1 player, the strong GM, Lanier Dominguez. So now white probably was on his own, out of kind of theory. Predojevic plays queen c1, targeting h6 square, willing of course to exchange this strong bishop of black, but Carlsen doesn't allow it. He plays h6, that's it, protected with the rook and the bishop so far. And a3 is what white plays, the typical plan with rook b1, b4, etc. Simple moves for black here, bishop to b7, rook b1 as mentioned. This is quite normal in the English structures. Queen to d7 and b4. Now there might be some tactical themes with if the rook on the b file gets opened and the bishop here, the one on b7 might be a little vulnerable, so having everything overprotected like this is never a bad idea. So rook to b8, having everything under control, tied up. White plays knight to b5, attacking a7 pawn, and well, black has a couple of ways to defend it. I guess going back with the rook doesn't make that much sense, but he could have chose maybe a7 or something, but Carlsen chose to put the bishop on the corner and defend it with the queen. Now rook to d1 and g5. Now he finds that himself in a very nice position, and he can even allow himself to a little bit of expansion here on the king side, which could be very important in the future, as black could have maybe some little tiny chances of attacking here, since the center is absolutely under control, so the g5 move is allowed. Bishop to c3, of course white is willing to exchange this strong bishop of black, and Carlsen says nay. He plays e5, blocking it so far. Of course taking it would be a positional mistake, I believe, because queen takes c3. Now all these dark squares are suddenly very, very vulnerable. So after bishop c3, e5 makes sense, grabbing even more space. White put his bishop on a1. Now we find a couple funny bishops on a1 and a8, both of them having a good diagonal, but as we're gonna see, the one on a1 is going to be closed for a while, because black has this very nice centralizing move, knight to d4, giving freedom to this bishop, attacking a little bit on this big diagonal, and which is more important, having a very healthy pawn structure and closing down, shutting down this bishop on a1. So a very nice positional game by Carlsen so far. not having really any problems to equalize from the opening. And here in the middle game, playing really simple and positionally very sound moves, improving his position little by little. At this point, I think his position is already preferable. White took on d4 with the knight, c takes d4, and now this bishop on a1 is hitting a wall of cement here. That's not a good piece on a1. White tries immediately to fix that by playing e3, trying to open up this bishop, this diagonal, but of course black is not going to collaborate. Instead, he improves his queen, threatening concrete things like the knight on f3, knight back to e1, and after bishop takes, knight takes, black finally castles, connects his rooks, and has a really very fine position, really solid one, and really easier to play here with black pieces. White plays e takes, and look at this, all these white pieces on the back rank, the rook's not doing that much, just defending the weakness on d3. The queen isn't a great piece, not to talk about the bishop, which is really a miserable piece here, full of pain, and well, this pawn of black on d4 is really cramping white's position, making this pawn really a weakness. White tries to improve his pieces, queen d2, so does black, knight to g6, and f4, trying to get something going on the king side, trying to open up something. Rook to f8 and rook f1, trying to act activity on the f file with the rook here against the queen, but Carlsen just closes that file, that possibility. g4, another strong pawn, getting even more space from white, and really white's position starts to be somehow suspicious, not really comfortable to play as white here. Rook from b to e1, and now Carlsen's plan is to play bishop f6 and support this future h4 breakthrough with h5, h4 probably. Predojevic exchanges a pair of rooks and tries to exchange the second one. And Carlsen says, well, if you want to take it, I'm going to put it on e6. Bishop tries to be relocated, recycled from b2 to c1. Of course, a useful move in this kind of position when you have a basically piece down here on a1. Carlsen goes with the knight to e7. Now white takes, f takes, queen e2, and king f7, defending everything. And once again, comparing white light pieces like this knight and the bishop, they are much worse than their black colleagues here. White has a serious weakness on here on d3. Okay, black has a couple of doubled pawns. White's queen is really good, but I think black must be on the driver's seat here. White has to do some weird maneuvers to try to activate his knight. And there it goes, Carlsen's plan, h5. Bishop to c1, and now b5, taking advantage of the tactical themes to create weaknesses on the pawn structure for white. To c takes, black just takes back, and here a move which probably isn't very accurate, but already a difficult position for white. He has little space, not that much to do, little squares, very few squares to maneuver with his pieces. White plays h3, and after g takes, he's relying on to recapture that pawn with king to h2, which in fact is a mistake. It seems serious mistake. Well, my engine says the correct move was to play g4, but after queen c6 with lots of activity for this queen, absolutely dominating the squares all over the board, so it's very difficult here to play for white, to know what's going on. Okay, you can have a passed pawn here on the g file, but really sharp and complex position here. But after king h2, simply going back to f5, defending the pawn, and black won a pawn that easily. Not sure if white has compensation. Bishop to d2 and queen g4. Magnus is of course offering a queen exchange, having willing to have a protected passed pawn here on h3, which would be of course decisive. Knight to f3, but now his light pieces are getting in. Knight to f5, attacking g3. Bishop comes to e1, defending, and now the knight is a monster on e3. a huge piece, absolutely decisive. Now white is willing to exchange queens, and Carlsen doesn't have any objection to that, as as white now right now has lots of weak pawns like a3, d3, even g3 at some point. So his knight just goes ahead to collect, to make the harvest here. Bishop to d2, and the one on a3 is on pre. Well, white takes the one on h3, but this knight still didn't have enough. Now some nice maneuvering by this knight of Magnus Carlsen, very instructive. How he gets back to his original very strong position here. White is not willing to exchange everything, because this pawn would be promoting in two moves. That would be 0-1 automatically. So knight c1, and now knight d5. After knight e2, just back to e3, the strong square where it started from. Bishop f2, now attacking b5. b5 is what white plays, trying to avoid that pawn from being captured. But now Carlsen gets his central pawns going. After g4, just e4, having a couple of strong pawns here. Believe it or not, actually white resigned here after 48 moves, and with some good reasons. It may not be so bad at the first sight, but just seeing this line after the simple capture d3, and there is no way white is going to stop this pawn from promoting or even taking the knight. So this is a huge position for black, absolutely winning. Black bishop controlling the important c3 square. So there is no way white is getting away with this. So there it goes. Magnus Carlsen recovering back, striking back with black pieces against Borki Predojevic from Bosnia-Herzegovina, and giving his team Norway 1 an important point on the first board.